What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Dialogues and Dice, Howreroll's D&D and role-playing game talk show. Today you're joining myself and Mr. Radovan Rainier himself,
Hey
El
guys.
Shagarooney.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, guys? How's everyone doing?
Hope everybody is having a fantastic Tuesday afternoon, stroke evening, stroke early hours of the morning, depends on whereabouts you are.
Yes.
Because it's like, if you're in Europe, it's like quarter past midnight.
I do feel bad about our European brethren, as always, but what are we gonna do? We can't,
I don't know. I haven't seen Hammer for a couple of weeks. I know Hammer's got some health issues, so lots of love going out to the Hammer.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna make my Hearthstone Academy kind of dedicated to him in a small, tiny way. So
I read that. That was kind of cool. I like that.
yeah.
So
It's just because he always hounds me about playing a hunter in Hearthstone, so I'm gonna oblige, and that's what we're gonna do.
well, yeah, you generally don't play
I can't stand hunters. But
hunters. I mean, all the many games that I've watched you play, I don't recall ever seeing you truly play anything hunterish.
Because in Hearthstone, I believe that if you want to play the game and win the game, you can just play a hunter and put anything in it. So I am intentionally playing a very impossible to win deck, and I'm going to win with it to show just how stupid hunters really are. That's like my goal, right?
So
show up-
basically, to make
Yes.
the worst deck possible and still win,
Yes.
and say this is why hunters are OP.
And why I can't stand them.
Right, there you
Yes.
go.
All for hammer time.
Well, that's kind of fun. That's kind of an awesome thing to do. I like that. That'll be interesting. So yeah, that's tomorrow evening, guys. 7:30, unless the professor decides to kick it off a little early. In which case, watch your Twitters.
It was, yeah, pretty much. I mean, I will probably be on at 8:30 EST, just because that's when we schedule, and it's good for consistency's sake.
Right.
But last week I just wanted to be early because I had nothing better to do and I had an hour to kill. And I had finished all of Jessica Jones on Netflix and I had nothing to watch. So I was like,
I'm on
I'll just play
episode
Hearthstone.
4, maybe, of Jessica Jones.
Oh, it's so good.
Man, I'm like still
You
on the
can't get
fence.
into it?
No, I'm definitely
Oh.
into it, but I'm still on the fence. It's like,
So good.
is it that awesome, or is it just another show? You know, like, is it?
All right.
You get what I'm saying? Like,
I get what you're throwing down. I just disagree
But
with you.
but as I said, I'm only on episode 4, so I haven't had time to like truly get immersed in the Jonesiness of it.
Well, it's only 13 episodes, so you might as well.
Better hurry up then,
Pick up
huh?
your pace, right? Like if you say I'm on episode 12 and I'm still not sure whether
Then,
it's good or
well,
not.
episode 4, and honestly, I think I fell asleep during episode 4, so truly, I'm on episode 3.5.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I think it's worth it. So.
Yeah, I'm just at the point where we've just revealed the fact that apparently in New York, bartenders are indestructible.
Yes. Oh, always.
So
That's
you know,
true.
I just figured that out.
I mean, the bartender down the street from me, man, he's a nerdy little kid, but
But he's
unbreakable skin.
indestructible because you've tried.
Of course. Oh yeah, bar fights. It happens all the time. Breaking the beer bottles, like you owe me money. All right.
Awesome. Alrighty, guys. Well, we're gonna kick things off. We got a lot for you today. Our show today is gonna be very trap themed. Lots of discussions about all things trappy. So let's kick things off. But before we really go too far into trappy world, the world of trappiness, one thing for sure that we know we're going to talk about is to bring you up to date with the current story that is going on Children of Dakar. So here we go with our first segment.
Adventure Recap.
The Adventure Recap. So, we are on episode 13 of Children of Dakar. Now, I've got a couple of things I want to throw out there for you guys talking about Children of Dakar. Thus far, the campaign really hasn't started. Now, here's the reason I say that, and this is why it's great for you to hang out with this particular show, joining us on Tuesday evenings, because we can tell you stuff, and you find stuff out on Tuesdays that you don't normally find out. So, the Children of Drakkar campaign, the only thing that has really happened that is directly related to the campaign is those 3 or 4 mysterious figures that stepped out of the ether. And that little bit of information that Marlowe had in relation to that from stories that she heard in the north. Now, that obviously everything is revolving around that, but our heroes are fixing to find themselves in a whole new light, a whole new world. And should they prevail against the lair of the creator, Renazin, I think the fruits of their labors might be something that's going to be very relevant. So what you've seen thus far has really been this is kind of up to about episode, and I think episode 14 is going to be the turning point for you guys. Up until episode 13, and including episode 13, this is kind of like the calm before the storm, the transition from the Marks of Intrigue campaign into Children of Drakkar. So, I know a lot of people. We had the last stream the last show that we had there was a lot of combat. It was very so there's a lot of combat at points, but it ended kind of with a lot of role play, and we hadn't really dabbled with a good old-fashioned classic dungeon crawl, which is why we've dabbled in the direction that we've dabbled now. But this is coming to an end, so I hope you guys have gotten your classic dungeon crawl fix, your trap fix, your haha look they've just fell in a huge pool of acid, hope they die fix, because you're fixing to start to see some very different things that are coming, and we're going to start ending up with some very much more kind of classic Howreroll episodes where there's a lot more role play, a lot more character interaction, a lot more development, a lot of emotion. So to kind of preface that's where we're going with this. But if you haven't caught up from episode 1 to 13, hello dog, Shagget is fixing to give you the update. So this is everything in a very small nutshell from episode 1 to 13. Take it away, buddy.
Basically, the story starts with the 3 heroes having been brought together on an old pledge to kill Kieliana's evil orc, former bastard guy named Rochek. And it really begins with the party succeeding. And in that, they kill Rochek and a band of orcs that have been terrorizing their section of the world for some time. And they are introduced to Marlowe, a monk, played by Spook, one of the new players in the campaign, and for Howreroll. And through, really just bringing closure to the loose threads of the previous story, the Marks of Intrigue story. We travel with Marlowe and some other survivors to a local town of Finnerton, right? Or is it the other one? I get those two confused. There's Finnerton and...
Finnerton is the second town that you came to.
Finnerton's the second town, right. So we go to the town of what, Gorbat? I don't have my paper in front of me, I'm sorry, my fault. Like Arendelle?
Oh, Arendelle, yeah. Okay, so Arendelle. Yeah, you went to Arendelle you escorted the lady and her maids to Arendelle.
Where the party of 4 became immersed in a mystery of shipments being stolen, kind of right out from under the nose of the townspeople, and the means being quasi-mysterious. And for a large part of this early portion of story, Radovan Rainier, Kieliana, Reza, blah blah blah. I don't know her last name. I don't think she never told us her last name. Maybe she did, and I forgot. And Marlowe. We don't know her last name for sure, although I know she has one, trying to find the culprit that exists in Arendelle, who uses a mixture of roguish tricks and magic. There was a tense part where Kieliana took an acid bath, something now Radovan has had an intimate relationship with. But we find the culprit, we chase him into the forest to the north of the town, and there he meets these 3 or 4 other mysterious people, which are the Drakkari, children of Drakkar, I guess kind of makes sense, who we find out are otherworldly creatures. They're not actually of this mortal plane. They're kind of, I guess they're aliens. It's the safe way to say it, right? They're fucking aliens.
They're the Greys.
They're the Greys.
And
yeah,
no matter
the
what
Greys.
happens, guys, no
Right.
matter how many of them Kieliana sees, she's going to keep saying to Radovan that she just doesn't believe in them. She's going to keep... They were figments of my imagination. They were orcs dressed funny. They were very tall goblins. She'll never acknowledge that they were aliens.
They were never aliens.
Very X-Files.
They mysteriously vanish, but the important thing that sticks in Radovan's mind, I mean, just going a little character perspective here, is that they were hoarding and collecting mastercraft shields from the local dwarf of Arendelle.
Right.
And who would want to hoard shields? Radovan has a shield himself. Warriors, fighters, okay? There's an army. Like, his thought process is there's an army there. There's something bad. Anyway, we kill the culprit to extract this information. Those weird creatures, the aliens vanish. And then we basically go to Finnerton to... Why did we go to Finnerton? That's a good question.
Basically, because after... You pretty much thwarted the fact that all of the shipments were getting stolen between Arendelle and Finnerton.
Right.
And the local
Harrington,
lord was... Yeah, Lord Harrington was so paranoid at that point. It was like, look, if
go.
I throw in a little extra cash, would you just at least get the stuff to Finnerton so that I have peace of mind that they might actually make it? Because bearing in mind, if these shipments didn't arise, if this shipment didn't get there, his name was ruined. He's selling to the king, and the king's outfitter, and he's already fallen short several times. So it's like, if I don't deliver this time, I am so screwed. So it was like the extra security factor.
It was extra security factor because if you guys realize Marlo, Kieliana, Reza, and Radovan don't actually have a reason to stay together nowadays. They were forced, the three previous to Marlo were forced together by the marks on their arms and having to get rid of them. But up until now, they're kind of in different portions of their life. You need to... Okay. Cool. You got to keep that in mind. Like, Radovan now, he's been working hard in Sorroborn, so he's like, okay, I pledged to Kia that we kill Rochek. Now that Rochek is dead, okay, I'll fucking do it. Reza is on her own little personal quest because there's a chance that she's, the half-daughter of the king of the whole lands. And Kia was all about killing Rochek, and now that that's over, she's kind of a lost puppy elf. And so we're kind of like a party without a cause. We go to Finnerton. We're approached after Kieliana is berated by some actual elves who actually act elfish, as opposed to Kia, who doesn't quite act elfish. We're approached by this, pint-sized hobbit man, halfling, and he basically says that there's this dungeon not too far out there that has magical things. You should probably go for 5,000 gold. I'll relinquish the map and the information about Renazin, and you guys go and procure the items if you survive. And we went out there, we fought some spiders and pseudo-spiders, those Aurelia, or I can't with the names, man.
The Arania.
The Arania, there we go. And we go into the dungeon, and pretty much for the last bunch of episodes, we've been in this dungeon, which is magically activated, magically utilized, with some old school traps thrown in, going from room to room, trying to survive to get to the treasure. I think it was Radovan and Kia who wanted to go on this adventure. Reza was a little bit more, and Marlo, I think, was just neutral, just generally neutral.
Right.
And it hasn't quite been explicit about why Radovan said, let's do it. Because you know how he feels about traps, and he's had bad experiences in the past. And I hope that in the coming episodes, you get to see why he made this choice. And it has to do with everything that's happened so far. So,
well, cool.
I sprinkled a little bit of my own character update in there, but...
Well, that's all right. No, so
we'll
speaking
do
of, let's move directly into that and talk to Radovan himself.
Okay, somebody will get the update.
Character update.
The character update this week, we are talking to the Cleric of St. Cuthbert, Radovan Rainier. Alrighty, so, yeah, first things first. Now, this is talking to, again, guys, we're talking to Radovan the cleric, not Shaggot the player. So, from a perspective, Radovan, he entered the lair of Renazin, which is also known as the Creator. Mm-hmm. And as you said before, there's promise of some serious magical rewards at the end of this thing, should you survive.
Correct.
So how is Radovan finding this trap-ridden hellhole?
Probably as you'd expect. Up until very recently, I had full plate armor. So swimming's not an option. Fighting certain magical beasts, not my, hard to do, hard to accomplish. It's been very stressful. Yeah. Having to rely on Reza to tell me something's secure is nerve-wracking enough, especially since, she means well, but she also has a way of acting impulsive. So, she walked over that trap when Marlo was standing on and got electrocuted again needlessly. It's been a wear and tear, man, on all of us as a party.
Honestly, I think at that point, it was like, ooh, goody, we found the door, trap's over.
Yeah.
And that lull of false sense of security, which... And we're going to talk in depth about that during the World Region Review section, DM Tips and Let's Talk, because we're very going to be trap intensive tonight. So I don't want to go too much into that. But I kind of sort of understand in one way how she let her guard down at that point.
Me too. And because I did later on. We go through all these things and we go to the first open, large, elegant looking room. And I'm thinking, okay, we passed all the traps, and then that's when I almost fucking died with an acid trap, which,
Hey, not gonna lie, I was like, all right now. And here's the thing, and this will forever never be known because Kia was not playing, or Jane was not playing Kia.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If Kia was here, would she have chosen the same course of action that you guys did? I think you'll never know that, and I think that's going to be. It's kind of funny because it's like,
yeah,
could it have gone better or worse?
I think, I don't think pertaining to the traps, we will ever know. I think, as a party, and now I'm speaking outside of Radovan, I think we did well playing her character with the combat situations, like what she would do in a fight. The mirror image, but then. We're about to beat the golem guy, and then we stop. She just doesn't do anything, because she has done that in the past, where she's like, well, I'll just leave it to you guys. But yeah, with the traps, we'll never know, whether that was what she would do. Because she could have been the first one to walk, and Radovan would not have fallen into the acid again. She would have had a double dose. Never know. We'll never know. Huh? Yeah, she had a dose. Yeah. So, it's stressful, and it's not fun, and... I only do it for a very particular reason, and that reason might surprise some of you guys. Just say that as Radovan Vernier.
There you go. So, yeah, Radovan spent a lot of time and effort getting together a huge sum of money to buy this glorified, beautiful suit of full plate, which it took a few months to be made, and he had to be fitted for it. And I remember during the Marks of Intrigue, it was a very deliberate thing that they had to do. In fact, they spent a lot of travel time specifically to pick up this armor. And now, due to the primordial acid bath, it is trash. In fact, at the end of the episode, we saw Radovan just take it off and kick it into the acid to allow it to dissolve. What does he feel about the lack of, the lack of armor all of a sudden? From both a monetary perspective and a material perspective, and then, of course, also from a vulnerability perspective.
Well, I will say that I feel naked. I'm in clothes, but I still feel naked. Not having that armor to protect me, so I feel very vulnerable now, especially since I suspect that there's more of this to come. I don't think that was the last trap we're ever going to encounter. I think there's a few last traps, for this place before we get the potential loot, if there is even loot. This could just be a whole big clusterfuck. Monetarily, I don't really care. Raisa seems to care more about gold and hoarding it and keeping it and earning it.
So as long as you've got enough money to reacquire one. Or
which I don't.
Well, I think that's the thing is you guys chipped in collectively between the four of you to cough up $5,000 for the info, which
the adventure,
which was a lot of coin, and I don't honestly know how much everybody else has got.
Well, I have 535 golds left.
Right.
I was never really in it for the golds. I even give some of my gold to Raisa to hold on to, which is a little weird considering her character and who she is and who I know her to be. I've never been about this life, about the gold. It doesn't mean much to me in the scheme of things. As long as I have
the life of a Cuthbertarian cleric, it's like, what do you need it for? I think the only thing, towards the end of Radovan's years, as he looks more and more towards retiring, I know he's got his eye on that tower.
Right, but my plan is to just curry favor with the leaders, and for good deeds good, well done. Yeah. Not buy it outright, but earn it, by my actions.
Well, and again, he already did a huge favor for him, which is why they were willing to sell it to him for such a measly sum. Which, of course, is not a measly sum, but it is in relation to what it is.
So that's already at a discount. Is that what you're telling me? You said 33,000 gold, right? Is it worth more than that? I mean...
No, was it 33,000? No, initially they said 33,000, but then I think they also said afterwards, and you'll have to go back and check your own episode. We'll have to go check your own episode. But I think he said, but under the circumstances X, Y, Z, and it was like, well, that's still way beyond my current limit.
It's still way beyond my means. I'm going to go to the king eventually and say, look, this is what I did for you guys. Here's proof of my deeds. Interrogate me all you want. Give it to me for cheaper so I can retire and protect Saruman. And that will be, I'll be a happy retired person by that point.
Well, and I think that's the one thing. I don't think that part was ever really truly explored or realized. Mm-hmm. Like, I just want a place to retire. I don't think at any point it was pointed out to them the benefits of having, a high-level cleric there. But the point is, of course, they have one currently.
It's Davian Preen, yes.
But Davian Preen is older, and he's not going to live forever. And at some point, because he is the way he is, and the fact that in the Marks of Intrigue, it was very apparent that his apprentice, his initiate, was being very much kept in the dark and wasn't being allowed to progress the way he should because Davian Preen wanted him at his beck and call. So he was robbing him of the opportunity to go out into the world and develop himself. So if anything happens and Father Davian Preen should pass away, yay, you've got a mid-level or low-level, like maybe 5th or 6th level priest now handling your entire town. There's better options, and I think Radovan's exploits would be to the point where everyone would know and trust. I mean, after all, he cured them of the disease.
I did.
And within the Church of St. Cuthbert, even though he fell from grace and had to atone, in doing so he came back with a holy relic, a significant artifact that had been lost. So that was kind of like, St. Cuthbert's standpoint was like, okay, you know what? You're back on the path. I'm going to watch you like a hawk, but we'll see where this goes. But for the churchhood, it was like, oh, wow, woo! So they got very excited.
Yeah, and I'm doing it for good intentions now. I mean, I really am trying to be on the straight and narrow, like legitimately for a change. And Father Preen, David Preen, it's like a second father to me.
I just want to point out, I think this is the first time that we have actually dungeon raided and won completely outright.
Oh, nice.
A heroic effort for the adventurers. The evil Overlord's dungeon has been defeated and he has been slain, which means every person that went on that dungeon raid racked up. I don't think anybody died. So that's friggin' awesome, guys.
Good job getting that gold.
There you go. Get those extra gold pieces. See, there are times when it does pay.
Maybe this Renison will be that time.
Right?
So yeah, I'm trying to be on the straight and narrow. I'm trying not to break the law in any possible way. If I do break the law unknowingly, I will reap the consequences. I will be fully prepared to.
There you go. And that's pretty much what you got to do, really.
Pretty much. Just hope it doesn't come to that. We'll see,
Right.
though.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, I mean that's kind of brings us up to date with where our story so far and where we're at kind of from a Radovan standpoint. So we're going to move on to the next segment where we're going to talk about the very thing that we've just been discussing, the dungeon itself, the lair of our evil overlord in our new section. Our next section.
World Region Review.
The World Region Review. We are going to talk in particular about Renison the Creator's Lair of Evil. Now, there's a lot of questions that you could raise about this. So, what do we know about Renison the Creator? Well, originally he was a very, very powerful mage that spent all of his resources creating magical items, artifacts. He was a magical artificer. And his wares were very sought after, and at one point he used to sell them and do commissions for people. But after a while, some unscrupulous individuals started to try to rob him, steal from him, take from him. And he began to develop a huge distrust. In the end, becoming completely paranoid, he decided to build himself an underground habitat, underground bunker, as it were.
Yeah.
And in doing so, he created a series of chambers that were designed to protect his magical items and himself from the unworthy. Now, in the tomes that they found, it was, the research that people had done in our halfling that found, he found the book of Renison Renison the Creator, and he found the map figured out the map to how to get to here. But there were several things that was brought to light. One of which was the end chamber apparently has a way that he can leave and come back. But once you come into his lair, there's realistically no way out. You go from room to room and you either succeed or die. Now, looking at that, why did he create a lair that would allow you the possibility of success, but with a high probability of failure? Well, for two reasons. One, he knew he wasn't going to live forever, and he had a lot of powerful magical items that somebody might be worthy of. In fact, if you remember, there was one point where it was said in the book, there were times when it was believed he would go out and he would scry for people that he found worthy and go gift them of some of his items. Now, so he creates this lair, and each chamber has its own deviously designed cunning that is there to thwart the prospective tomb robbers or item robbers. And his idea is he wants you to be able to succeed, but he basically wants the foolhardy to come in here, the greedy, those unworthy, and fail and die in the attempt. Now, where do our players fit into that? Honestly, I'm not going to say one way or the other. But let's look at the chambers. So the very first thing, our heroes come into this, they come down the stairs, and there is a plaque on the wall. And this has been very much not really paid a lot of attention to, but it said, "Take what you will, leave what you can." What were your thoughts on that, Shagget? Where do you have any thought process on that? Now you're further in to think about what could you have. Was there any? Obviously, it was there for a reason.
Well, that statement can be interpreted many ways. Like, either the traps are designed for you to sacrifice an item to gain an item, like a transference of sorts.
Right.
I think it could also be construed that, will can also be seen as willpower. You take what you will, leave what you can, as in leave a part of yourself. Maybe leave the unworthiness.
Right.
To take what you can. I mean, there are many ways you can interpret it.
We're at a point where I can kind of reveal that information at this point.
Okay.
Okay. So let's take the first room. Now, if you remember, right by that plaque was a brazier of fire.
Yes, that's correct.
And the first room you come into, so the very first chamber, is basically a fountain and a water elemental.
I got it! You wanted us to take the fire to douse it on the water elemental, take the water from the fountain to douse the fire elemental.
There you go.
And then take the fire elemental to something? I mean, the idea being...
exactly. So if you would have taken the fire, you could have used the magical fire to obliterate the water elemental. So you guys would have basically candy caned that first room. Then you take the water, because you notice the water started to fill back up. After
it started to fill back up.
You take the water, and then in the second room that they went into, basically was the fire elemental. Now, if they'd have used the magical water against the fire elemental, once again, would have been a very easy encounter. But at the same time, there's method to this guy's madness, because he is a very cunning individual. So they already knew, because of the book, oh, this guy's obsessed with elements. Oh, we've had water, we've had fire. So the third room comes in, and there's a big
pit?
Well, before the pit, there was the big urn full of dirt.
Right.
So everybody assumed
it would turn
Earth
into
elemental.
Yeah, right.
Now, of course, here's how Renison thinks. He's lulling you into a false sense of security. He's devious. He wants you to be obsessed and focus on the pile of earth, which they did.
Right.
They weren't ready or thinking traps. So Racer goes over, interferes with the door, bam! It's actually nothing to do with an earth elemental at all. The room is just booby-trapped, but the earth elemental pit, or the earth elemental bowl that they're expecting to be an elemental is nothing more than a distraction. To have the players, or whoever it is trying to rob the tomb, concentrate so much on that they are not paying attention to the other possibilities that could happen. And of course, Radovan ended up falling down the pit and took a considerable amount of damage based on that.
I just like falling into pits, what can I say, you know?
So then we move to the fourth room. The fourth room basically had several unpleasant traps already in place, which Racer found most of, and Radovan used his airwalk ability to avoid the pressure plates, and he carried everybody across.
Right.
But then there's 3 doors. Now, up to now, none of the doors have been visible. They only appear after you somehow successfully deal with the room.
Right.
And of course, one of the doors that they opened
was fire.
They never opened the top door, so they don't know what that was going to be. But I can confirm that it was an unpleasant booby trap. And finally, they open the door and work their way down to the 5th room. So in the 5th room, this is the fun room. This was the one with the staff on the pedestal. Yes. And there was the big marble block that had 2 holes. Now, they actually solved this exactly how it was supposed to be solved.
Oh, phew!
Because you'll notice in the little side chamber, there was a second staff. Now, there was really no way, without being extremely devious magically. Now, the use of possibly some kind of telekinesis spells may have allowed you to succeed. Mages or sorceress type abilities to float that thing out of that room. But the second Radovan and Racer went into that chamber, the door came down and they were stuck. That was the whole point. Now, of course, the staff itself was very symmetrical, and it was designed that way for a reason. Because, yes, if you broke it in half, you had 2 equal...
You had 2 equal parts.
So this was Renison's tests. And the whole point is, as well as trying to kill you, he's testing you. What level of physicality do these people have? What level of wisdom do they have? What level of intelligence do they have? All designed to basically say, are they worthy of the items that I have created? Do they deserve this reward? So you guys...
The answer is no. Because we only succeeded really with one trap. But he doesn't know that, right? We just passed it and survived.
So they defeat that room and move into the room that was all kind of dark except for some glowing sconces, and that's where the undead whirling dervishes came flying. Yeah. Now, one of the things I want to point out to you guys is let's take a look at this dungeon. Nothing is alive in this dungeon. It is either undead, elemental, or a construction. Why? Well, Jesus, guys, if you're going to lock things away for hundreds and hundreds of years, how do they survive? Living things couldn't survive. So that's why there's nothing living down here. All the enemies are all some kind of creature or animated object that doesn't need air. So they deal with the whirling dervishes, and then they continue on to the 7th room. Now, the 7th room was that weird little designed room where there's 3 levers.
Yeah.
And yes, as they ascertained correctly, there is an order process. 3 levers, pull them in the right order, none of the traps get triggered. Pull them in the wrong order, and the traps get triggered. The correct order was basically to have pulled them not in the order that they did.
Yeah, we did far one, top one, then bottom one, right?
The correct order would have been the top one, the far right one, and then the one in the middle. But of course, there's no way to know that. This trap was not about, do they have superior intelligence to figure this out? Mm-hmm. This was more about how will they react if they fail. Like, if you'd have done it right, it would have been so easy.
Well, what if you pulled the levers down? Would that have made a difference?
No,
or did
up
that?
or down made no difference.
Okay.
That was irrelevant. That was just an added dimension to add
the
paranoia.
unknowable.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
But consequently, they did trigger some traps. They did have a few unpleasant situations, but they did survive and move on. And then they came to the lair room number 8, which there was the big glowing orb, and they rightly covered the orb, which revealed the door, but it also at the same time brought the stone golem and the arachnid golem out of the side chambers, and they had to fight those things. And again, this was a very kind of, you got 2 types of combat here. You've got one that's very physical and very brutal, and one that's very agile and very dexterous. And how they deal with those was kind of very relevant. So after surviving that chamber, they move into the 9th room, which is the one with the little symbols. You have the bronze symbols, the silver symbols. Now, again, this was Renazon's way of exploiting the trust. He's basically set you up to know about doors, to know, okay, this, that, and the other. You know everything's trapped. So correctly so, they start following the path. Well, the only real no-no in that entire chamber is you can't have 2 people on one at a time. That's really it.
But we were to in the beginning part of the of that room, but not the latter part.
You're fine up until you open the door. Once you open the door, activates everything. And at that point, when a door opens, anybody, when you've got 2 people standing, they suddenly get electrocuted. Well, Radovan rightly deduced, wait a second. Why are there 2 doors visible to us? That's not really been the case, except that one chamber which was trapped. So,
yes.
you correctly deduced that that the doors were probably some kind of part of the trap. And eventually you did indeed figure out that the real door was between the 2 fake doors.
I love that Radovan actually figures some shit out,
right?
And then he still rolls horribly, and that's all that people make fun of him about. He figures shit out, and then he rolls poorly, and everyone makes fun of him in chat. I'm like, well, he got things right. You don't remember the things he gets right, do you, chat? Do you?
They
got a bone to pick with you.
Was the staff a phallic symbol? Hey, any staff is phallic if you want it to be. But going back to what we talked about earlier, of course, as soon as that door appeared, we solved the problem, we solved the trap, and then everyone's instantly lulled into that false sense of security. So this is where Racer, thinking it's now safe, runs up, gets on the same square as Marlowe, and both of them got electrocuted. Yeah. And that was the whole point. It's like the false sense of security. Are you all going to now come over to the door and all of you stand on the one thing together and wait for the door to open and all basically fry?
Right.
And then, of course, then they move on from that chamber and they get to the room they're in right now, which had the flight of stairs going down between the 2 big fire pits, the 2 long water troughs. But everything else seems perfectly safe, right? Now, logically, here's the thing. You look to your left and your right, and you see, well, there's water trough here, water trough here. The safe thing is to walk through the water troughs. But they don't know this. Of course, you have to remember, they don't know this. But here in front of them is an open expanse. Now, due to frustration, anger, being upset by everything, Radovan's like, oh, fuck, let's just get this over with, and moves forward before Racer checked the floor, and this is where he discovered, to his warm-skinned, blistering delight, a huge acid bath. And now he shares something in common with Keeliana, because you've both had acid baths, which is kind of
true. Very true.
Now, again, they did survive that, and they haven't seen what's beyond that chamber, and they really don't know how many more rooms and how many more things they've got to go through. But the whole point of this is, the lair itself is designed to be dangerous and lethal and kill the unworthy, but it is at the same time designed to be somewhat possible. And there's reasons for that. As I said, if you can prove yourself to be worthy to Renizon's past, corpse, whatever, you deserve those items. But if you're not, you will die in the attempt. And as you've already seen, most of the traps rebuild themselves magically. So if you all die down here, the next people that find their way in have to deal with the same things that you did. Nothing that you've done really is something that they can, bypass. They're going to have to do most of that stuff anyway.
Right.
So that's kind of the World Region Review looking at Renizon's Dungeon of Mischief. So we're going to move on from that, and we're going to talk about something a little less D&D related, but nonetheless gaming related. Endless Night, thank you for resubscribing. Give that man some love.
Oh yeah, Endless, thank you, man.
Gaming news.
Gaming news. So we're not going to talk about anything D&D related in gaming news tonight. In fact, we're going to talk about something very, very gamey, but something very different. And we are going to discuss a game that is kind of recently came out and is, especially right now, timing couldn't be worse for this game. So we're going to talk about Star Wars Battlefront. Now, Star Wars Battlefront is a new game that came out. It is a first-person shooter slash simulator, really. It covers all aspects of the Star Wars universe combat. It talks about, or the game itself is involved in ship-to-ship combat. You can be in a TIE fighter or an X-Wing, an A-Wing, or an Interceptor and fight. You can fly the Millennium Falcon. You can be in Boba Fett's weird-looking, strange Slave One ship. Or you can be in a snowspeeder trying to wrap your proverbial cables around AT-AT legs and bring those down. Or you can be ground troops fighting, shooting stormtroopers and rebellion alike. You can also play all manner of heroes from Princess Leia to the Emperor himself, including Han Solo, Boba Fett, Luke Skywalker. All of these heroes are yours to play. Darth Vader, of course. And I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's a hugely kind of immersive game because it has so many aspects to it. Now, the brand new expansion for this game, the free downloadable content, came out today. So if you are playing this, you can download the content for free. If you're not playing it, then let's take a look, and I'm going to show you guys a recent commercial. Now, the one reason this game, of course, is getting a lot of play right now, the Battle of Juka, which is the new downloadable content, is very much inspired by the new Star Wars movie that is released on December 18th this year, The Force Awakens. So it really has brought a lot of that forward. So if you are the sort of person that's been playing Star Wars Galaxies in the past, or if you've played X-Wing TIE Fighter, this is like the new evolution of that game. So if you have a desire, if you like all things Star Wars, this is the current game for you. And just to kind of bring you up to date, they've been doing a lot of play with some really good commercials for the game. And we're going to show you one of those right now. Take a look if you haven't done so yet. at Star Wars Battlefront.
If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Alrighty, so yes, there is Star Wars Battlefront. If it's a game that you can basically take a look at if you're interested, if you love all things Star Wars. And yes, that was Anna Kendrick of Pitch Perfect 1, 2, and Twilight fame there in the commercial at the end.
Oh, please don't say Twilight. She's so much better than Twilight.
I know.
She's not worthy of Twilight.
Some people would know her from that sad thing. But yeah, so I mean, it's a fun game. If you get into it, I'm playing it a lot right now as well. All I'm gonna say is, don't pick up. You know, if you happen to come across me and my A-wing flying your TIE fighter, I will shoot your ass down.
Yeah, he's like a baller pilot, apparently.
I'm baller. Yeah. When it comes to this game, this is something that I have some level of skill. Anna Kendrick. There you go. Oh, I love it. Anna Kendrick. Nice. Very good, Orochi. That's awesome.
And Parking Seal, same.
Oh yeah, you're all on it, right? So yeah, so check that game out if you like this sort of thing. You'll have a lot of fun with that. I really like it just because it gives you can play ship-to-ship combat and do some simulatory stuff, or you can get down and dirty and first-person shoot it up. And you know, there's nothing more fun than a message popping up that just says, like, Gorbad just became the Millennium Falcon, and you're like, oh yeah, bitches, it's on. Or you find a power-up to turn your pathetic little infantryman into Luke Skywalker or Han Solo, and go running at as many stormtroopers as you can with your pistol, shooting at them, yelling at the top of your voice, only to turn around and run back moments later. So... So there's your gaming news fix for this week. So we're going to move forward, and again, keeping things trap related.
Yes.
Let's talk about traps in our next segment, where I'm going to talk about it from a Dungeon Master's perspective in DM Tips.
DM Tips.
DM Tips. So let's talk about it from a Dungeon Master's perspective. What do traps mean? Well, here's the thing. First of all, and I said this to Shaggy, if you as a Dungeon Master want to make a trap to kill your players, here's how you do it. One way in, no way out, nothing else. Let them walk down a flight of stairs 100 feet underground, seal off the exit, make nothing else in the room. No light, no air, no traps. Just lock them in there and they're going to die. It's that simple. Of course, as a Dungeon Master, your job is not to flat out murder your players, but to provide them with a challenge. So the traps that you set have to have a number of elements. First of all, realistically, they should all be possible to avoid or navigate. And if you look at a lot of the traps, like as we've gone through Renaissance Lair, the Lair of the Creator, all of the traps could be dealt with little to no damage if you knew what to do and addressed it the right way. Of course, you don't. You don't know the right way. And that's the fun of the traps, to know that there is ways to achieve it, and only the most devious and cunning and suspicious of players may figure this stuff out without taking a whole bunch of damage. Now, personally, I don't like any trap that is capable of taking any player from full hit points to nothing. It's instant death. So, generally speaking, I like traps that will hurt you and hurt you bad, but won't kill you outright, because at that point they allow the other players and yourself a possibility to do something and act in a way to save you. It allows people to interact. It allows people to have that moment to shine. And at the end of the day, like the one big trap that they had that was the worst trap, I think, is the acid trap. Radovan falls in it. It's a 10-foot drop into 10-foot deep acid. He's wearing plate mail. He sinks to the bottom. Now, Marlowe, Kia, Racer could have all stayed at the top of that, like swimming in the acid, and been a lot easier to rescue. Radovan, on the other hand, not so much because of plate mail. So of all the people to have wandered down those stairs first and step on it, Radovan was probably the most unfortunate choice. That being said, he also had the most hit points and was most likely to survive long term.
I mean, I was already at reduced hit point state. I mean, I got electrocuted a couple times in the previous room, so I was at half health, essentially.
Exactly.
So that's what made it actually scary.
I think Racer was down to like 14 hit points at that point, so it could have possibly killed her on the first immersion. But the point with it is it was avoidable, it was navigatable, and it was detectable. And as the case with a lot of these traps, the cunning is in switching it up. And as I say, if you notice with this particular dungeon, the traps keep changing theme. They keep altering their mentality. 1 minute it's combat, then it's detecting and finding pits, then it's pulling levers, then it's navigating across a floor. So that it constantly keeps switching things up to keep them on their toes. And then when there is a pattern, it breaks the pattern deliberately to lull them into a false sense of security. Hence, oh look, it's a water elemental. Oh, now it's a fire elemental. Look at that big pit of dirt. We're going to be fighting an earth elemental in this, guys. And they were convinced of it. The players were convinced it's going to be an earth elemental they're going to fight. Well, it wasn't. It was a big old tub of dirt that was there to lull them into a false sense of security, and it worked. Racer went over to the door, tried to open the door, and forgot to check for traps in front of the door. So the biggest trap in that room wasn't the trap itself. It was taking them and pulling them out of a sense of cautiousness. It pulled their mind in the wrong direction. And I think that's where some of the traps that you do can be devious, because you know, you can set things up to where you can trick your players. But bearing in mind, once again, as a dungeon master, you have ultimate power, where we've always said that also means you have ultimate responsibility. You can't set things up. As Clandestine just said, yeah, back in the day, you used to have things like save versus death or die. One dice roll. And one of the saving throws, it used to be save versus death. And anything that would kill you outright, roll a d20. If you make a saving throw, you live. If you fail, you're dead. And they quickly got away from that mentality, because it's kind of a harsh reality way to play the game. But at the end of the day, I think dangerous and potentially fatal traps are all part of the game. And of course, the higher level the players are, the higher the levels of risk are, but then also the higher level of reward has to be. So clearly, if they successfully navigate this dungeon, the hope is that the reward at the end would be worth the risk. I could be a complete asshole and they get nothing. We even joked about it, like, yeah, what are you going to do if you get to the end and there's a little note from the halfling that goes, haha, gotcha. Or, as they were all worried, that the dungeon was actually...
Well, that's Bane was worried about that,
right,
yeah.
The dungeon was actually going round in a circle, and they were going to end up back in the first room again.
No.
And basically have a never-ending cycle of trying to thwart the dungeon. So, but again, while I made it very difficult for the players to rest, in numerous rooms, there were some rooms that it was possible and some rooms that it was possible, or feasible. So the thing came down to, can you pick the right room? Do they trust, I can rest here, I can't rest here? Mm-hmm. So I think when it comes down to it, the DM tip really, if you're gonna put traps in there, you have to make sure they are navigatable, that they're feasible and they work. You've got to have a mechanism, and those mechanisms, for the most part, should be either detectable or possibly disarmable from a rogue's perspective. But again, of course, it depends on how evil you want to be as well. So really, when it comes down to the traps from a Dungeon Master's perspective, they are a tool to test your player's resolve. Test their ingenuity, test their ability to think outside the box, and ultimately, add some level of enjoyment and frustration, which I think is also a big part of it. The tension and the frustration that traps can bring to a player are all important. So if you're going to put traps in your dungeons, guys, those are my general rules. Don't go crazy. Don't make them impossible to defeat. Don't make them instant death traps. Because to be honest, if that's what you want to do, you can do it absolutely any time you want to. So there we go. So we're going to move on to our second to last segment tonight, where we're going to discuss traps from a player's perspective.
Let's talk.
Alrighty, so let's talk. So, as a player of Dungeons & Dragons, and as a person that has been through numerous trap encounters, what do traps mean to you, Shaggy? I mean, when you're dealing with them, how do you feel about traps?
Well, I like to think of traps as another aspect of D&D, right? So there's the encounter aspect. Like, I go into a room and there's a troll. Well, clearly the trolls are naturally inclined to kill me or attack me. Right. So the fight encounter begins. There's the role-play investigative aspect. We enter a town and there's something that we need to do or solve, and this person has this information, this person has that information. Maybe we glean what we need from it, or maybe we don't. Traps it's odd. It's like the opposite of the fight encounter, right? In that you enter a room, there's no troll there, there's something you don't know where it is, you don't know how it's activated, you don't know how it's disarmed, and you don't know how it's detectable. Maybe it's not detectable. And then once it's revealed, it's not scary anymore. It's just, can you survive it? Or like, are you fortunate enough with your rolls to survive it and get over it? So from a player's perspective, it's a whole other headspace. Like, it's an after-the-fact kind of deal. So MC above said, I find it funny that Shaggy said, it was scary that I was at half health, and not the fact that it's a 10-foot pool of acid that scared me. It was the fact that I was at half health when I flew into it. It's interesting because the vat of acid is not scary to me as a player. It's the fact that, can I survive it based on my current situation, that scares me. Right. It's a reverse of it. It's not the holy shit, there's a giant monster there. There's a Tarrasque. That's scary. It's, can my character survive it at this state? Well, he has plate armor, so he can't swim very well. He'll stick right to the bottom. And I only have 30 health with an extra 10 for Die Hard. That's scarier than, I'm at full health, I mean, it's just a different psychological thing. So it might be funny to hear me say that, but it's just how I feel. Traps to me is just another way of playing the game, it feels to me, like another aspect that I have to mentally prepare for, because a lot of it's out of my control. I mean, we're going to activate these traps. Like, the odds of us solving each one without taking any damage are very low, Right. A lot of it comes to chance. So that feeds into my character's mentality of, let's just get this over with. We went through 9 fucking rooms of traps. We're in an antechamber that looks vastly different. Maybe there aren't any traps here, which is why I fell into the vat of acid. And why my character did too. because the player informed the character in a certain way.
Right. Yeah.
We are both full of despair, exasperated, tired of being reliant on someone else to discover these things. So we just want to barrel through, and of course that's a fallacy that you don't do that, especially if you're a plate-wearing cleric. But yeah, it's a different mentality, it's a different psychology that you just have to prepare for, and we're not fully prepared for it as players, I don't feel. I mean, especially the length of these, like, oh, there's another room. After a while it wears on you, and you kind of just like, yeah, yay, let's see what happens.
So that level of despair, that level of kind of being worn down, that's the whole thing. That's
the whole point of the trap.
Right. It's one thing to do that to the players. It's something else to to do it to the characters. It's something else to successfully do it to the players as well, because anytime the players themselves get a real sense of what their characters are going through, it amplifies the roleplay. It makes the game better.
Right. It makes the game better.
Because instead of role-playing, well, my character at this point is very frustrated, you are frustrated. So it's not hard to roleplay that.
It's not hard to roleplay that at all. I mean, it's just... You just let it... It helps with the roleplay. I mean, it helps. Right. It makes me remember those times where, the fire elemental's there, and Marlowe's like, well, Spook is like, well, I could punch it, but it will physically hurt me every time I hit it.
Right.
So then it's like, you feel useless. You're like, well, what can I do?
Right.
There are times where Bane has spoken to me off stream, and she's been like, I was so useless versus those undead. That was during Marks of Intrigue.
Right.
And I was like, well, yeah, you have stabby things, and they're skeletons with no, skin or vital organs. So, she gets exasperated as Reza. He's like, holy shit, I'm useless here.
Right.
And Radovan feels that whenever there's anything having to do with falling or water or submersion, anything that his plate armor is not designed for, which, happens. Or spikes even. I mean, walks over spikes. So
right, and of course that's the thing, is you look at the characters and the diversity of the characters. Clearly, this is a place where Reza, being the rogue, is in her element. This is a place where she can truly shine above anybody else, because she has that ability to, she has that ability to search for traps. She is stealthy. She can navigate. So there's a lot of times in this where she gets to shine as a rogue. So this is a great place for a rogue to play in, but it also puts a lot of the responsibility on her shoulders. So of course you get a lot of pressure with that. Yeah, as a rogue, this is great because I'm really getting to be a rogue. I'm really getting to search for traps, disarm traps, and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like, Jesus, if I screw up,
Right, if I fail, yeah.
But of course, that's why, because it's an elongated, that is the reason why, as a dungeon master, I did put some combat encounters in. I did put some things in where, knowing that, okay, if they don't take the water in the first chamber and use it against the fire elemental, they have other means. Radovan can create water. There's other things that they can do. So I take all of those things into account when I create that, when I create that encounter, and make sure that I do so in such a way that there's more than one way that you can succeed. Like, there's not only one way, and it's dungeon dependent, and if you miss it, you're screwed.
Right.
So there's always an alternative way to try to achieve something. And I think that's the thing. But knowing that you do have a lot of combat-orientated, you got Marlowe, you got Radovan, this, that, and the other, then yeah, the Whirling Dervish encounter, it's a fight. That's it. It's a glorified fight.
Straight up fight, right.
But once again, comes that thing, they're mummies. And what do we know about mummies? They burn. So Kia having fire, flaming hands, fireballs. Fireball I knew wasn't probably going to get used down here. But flaming hands would have been nasty to those things. But it never got used. But the option was there.
Right. And Reza used the Searing Lights, and I used the Searing Light, although I missed.
Exactly. So you guys used that against the undead. So you guys did use a lot of that stuff. But while those dervishes were pretty badass, you also had a lot of options to do increased damage to them as well. So there was a balance there.
Right.
But I think from a trap perspective, I mean, do you feel like when you're playing through traps, do you get a sense of tension, a sense of...
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It's the unknown that gets me first. Once it's revealed, I just find it funny and laugh. And I'm like, oh, well, that's actually pretty fucked up. We could die here. That might kill me. What's your health at? How many heals do I have? But it's before anything is sprung, it's nerve-wracking as all hell. Like that room with the 3 levers and that 3 weird statue with the rod in the middle,
right.
which accurately did fire out. I mean, that was predicted by people. I think it was Marlo and Reza who said, yeah, that's probably going to fly out at us. The fact that it did was not as funny as the fact that, well, there's 3 levers. Do we do it all at the same time? Do we do it sequentially? What's the order? And then what's the trap?
Right.
Like, is it spikes in the wall? Is it a pit? Is the ceiling going to collapse on us? Or is another door going to divide us? You don't know. And you just have to, like, there comes a moment psychologically as a player where you're just going to be like, well, just do it. You know? Like, I love my character. I don't want him to die. But we're obviously not going to get anywhere if we don't do anything.
Right.
So, and that's where the other frustration comes in, when the other players are so scared, and you're like, well, something needs to happen. I'm not ideal to see what would happen, to do it, but I can't tell them to do it themselves. I mean, there's that back and forth, which is in the role play too, where we have to do something. We can't just sit here and do nothing. And even if this was not on stream, I would be just as frustrated to be like, well, we have to do something.
Right.
We have to see what'll fucking happen. Just do it.
And I think that's the joy of it, is that's what you're trying to achieve as a dungeon master. You want to pull that out of the players, because you know the characters are getting to that point where it's like, we have to get out of here. We have to move forward. If we're going to die, we're going to die. But I know that staying here is not an option. And that level of despair, every time you open that door and there's another chamber, it's like, oh God, no! When will we ever get to the end of this infernal place? And that's the thing, is the reason I designed this, it's like room after room after room after room.
Mixing it up, switching it up.
Right, is exactly for that reason, is to wear you guys down to a point where you do make mistakes. And once again, that is yet again another test of Renison. Patience. Do you have the patience to deserve my stuff? Are you gonna make the sort of, are you gonna fall for these things? Are you gonna make mistakes? And I think all that really proves is, yes, Radovan and Marlo are human. Yes, Reza is half human. Kia, on the other hand, being Elven, maybe you can argue maybe she should have more patience. Right. But that being said, Jane wasn't here to play Kia in the last session, so we wouldn't have seen how that really went down. So Kia didn't interact a whole bunch, but she was a good utility tool for the entire session. And her spider climb was realistically huge in saving Radovan.
So, very much so. Yeah.
But yeah, so I think, traps are one of those things. They're awesome, they're fun, they can really bring the level of tension up. They can kind of really get players on their wits end, and to that nerve-wracking, knuckle-biting moment. Mm-hmm. But everything can be overdone, and I think this is the thing. Is I don't think our players or me really want to see traps for a while after this.
Well, I think what it comes down to is the interactivity is once it's done, it's done.
Right.
But preceding that, there's tension. After it's done, well, it's there, so don't fucking do it again.
Right.
But when it comes to an encounter with a person who might be good, might be bad, like the Shadow, at least there's interactivity.
Right.
At least there's a dialogue and stuff that can happen before the turncoat moment might occur, or not. Maybe Renison is alive at the end of this in some unnatural way, and maybe he's a dick who has no treasure, or maybe he's a lich,
maybe
or
he's a mummy. Yeah,
maybe he's a guy who we can reason with. Maybe he's not a guy we can reason with. But Radovan is going to try. I mean, honestly, if there is a thing he can interact with, he's going to try to interact.
Maybe there's a halfling that basically took 5k out of your funds and is laughing his ass off. This entire thing was nothing more than an exercise in his fantasy YouTube channel. He was videotaping the entire thing. Look at these idiots. It's like halfling TV.
Right. So, I mean, everything in moderation is kind of the key, and that's why you're so amazing at DMing, because you do moderate. I mean, there are streams that are strictly heavy on roleplay, and there are streams that are strictly on combat, and then there's a little bit in between. It's hard to balance it out entirely.
And it is.
And appease everybody.
Yeah, it's on an average stream, we got 3 hours. In an ideal world, we could fit a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this. A lot of the time, we successfully, I think, some roleplay, some combat. But sometimes it ends up going one way or the other. It's like a lot of roleplay next to no combat, or a lot of combat next to no roleplay. But I also know, from a viewer standpoint, there are those viewers that love this dungeon crawl stuff. They live for it. They enjoy it way more. Then there are the others that are like,
I only want combat, or I only want roleplay.
I want to see fights. And then another person is like, that was good and all, but there really wasn't any fun interaction. And I think that's the thing, is trying to please everybody. It's impossible, as they say, to please everybody all of the time. So we have to do it in chunks.
Right.
It's like,
and the chunks work. Yeah. And honestly, like, if you're not just watching the whole stream all the time, you could go on YouTube and just look at the dungeon crawler episodes. Right. I mean, maybe you won't get full context, but you could do that. You can do this is just a strict battle. This is a strict fight with orcs. You know, when Veslar, Piper, and Arya broke into the before he died to the Mimic, which would be, like, those are self-contained in a very cool way, actually. I mean, they are what they are, and you can watch them or not.
It cracks me up that even though Radovan isn't castrating anybody, somehow chat has still somehow found its way onto the subject of castration.
It's great because when Radovan in the Marks of Intrigue cut off the thief's hand, remember, he borrowed Race's dagger?
Yep.
I remember Milk, especially in chat, was like, I forgot how much of a dick and how much of an awesome badass Radovan actually is. Because she was reminded that he did castrate the dude back in the day.
Which he did.
Which some of those kind of get lost in time, like, he's capable of that stuff. So, yes, he's a castrator. He will castrate again.
Radovan the castrator, water god, castrator, seamstress, or whatever.
He's definitely not a water god anymore. I think that's kind of been ousted. But it's funny. I mean, because people forget some of the tropes.
And it is, and I think that's the fun of it. It's all those variants. So let's move on. If you guys got any questions for us, now is the time to ask them.
I know Stahl had a question about the staff room. I don't remember what it was, so re-ask it.
Questions and answers.
Viewer questions and answers, yes. So Stahlknockers, in the staff room, how was Whisper able to work? There was something about having an air passage or something required for it to work. Okay. So the bottom line is, you've got the wall comes down. It moves. Therefore, anything that is going to have a level of movability, there has to be some room for friction. There has to be some room. And the rules of Whisper basically stipulate, while it can't go through a solid wall, it has to be. It can travel through, as much as a crack, basically. And that's really it. When that wall came down, understand that wall, unlike the other walls, was not designed to be permanently sealing. It come down just as a barrier. It wasn't as airtight as the others. It wasn't as locked in as the others. So there were cracks there. Arguably, they could have, if they had the right tools, levered that door up and got it back up. They didn't have the right tools. But that's basically how. It was like, that was not like a solid stone magical seal-off door. This was a chamber-dropping door that was designed to go back up once they managed to figure it out. So that's pretty much why.
Snav, your question, you're playing a dwarf fighter and I'm a meat shield that's 6th level. What can I do feat-wise to increase my survivability? Well, I am a huge fan of Die Hard. Endurance into Die Hard.
Numerous times Die Hard has saved Radovan's life. My
freaking life. Radovan Rainier is a tank heal bot, but now he's kind of expanding into a little bit more, thankfully. Combat expertise, if you're intelligent enough, you can take your power. You can take your BAB into defensive, right? I mean, into armor class. That's a good one. I think it's combat expertise. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gorbad.
Yeah, and then there's one that allows you to basically convert points to defense, which is huge.
Right.
But you have to also, but you gotta be high level, and you gotta have like certain ability. The prerequisites for that are pretty heavy.
Right. I mean, it's a tree you gotta go into, man. But
right.
Basically anything so you can stay conscious as long as you possibly can will keep you alive longest. I mean, really, realistically.
Right.
And a high armor class, of course. You can't go wrong with it.
MC Gore, is there any role-playing system you hate? If not, which is your least favorite? Well, that's a. I've played so many. There used to be a system. There's an old game called Anywhen that I used to hate the game system. I liked the concept, but I didn't like the game system. And there's also a game called Rollmaster, which I both love and hate. Rollmaster is the most realistic role-playing game that exists. For example, there is the combat book that actually has table upon table. It pits every weapon against every armor type. So there is a table for dagger versus chainmail, dagger versus plate mail, dagger versus leather, dagger versus unarmed, dagger versus scale mail. I mean, I'm not kidding. And it uses a very different system in the fact that your chance to hit the target and your chance to damage the target are two separate things. You roll to hit first. If you hit, then you roll to penetrate, which I know sounds terrible, but you roll to penetrate the armor. So, hypothetically, a dagger versus plate mail, your chance to hit is very high. Because stabbing a dude in plate mail that is very immobile is not a hard thing to do, but your chance of doing any real damage is limited. Whereas you're less likely to hit with a massive warhammer, but if you hit, you're probably going to do more damage. Against an unarmed guy, you're more likely to hit them and do damage with a dagger, but it's likely to not be as lethal. It's harder to hit them with a two-handed sword because they're unarmored and they're very agile and quick and able to duck and dive and move. But if you hit them, it is almost always going to be critically bad. So the problem with that, it adds a level of awesome realism, but the downside is combat takes forever. And I do mean forever. To the point where if you have more than 3 or 4 players, you deliberately avoid combat in any possible way you can.
Right, because it's like a 4-hour combat encounter.
Exactly right.
And it's like, who wants to sit there for that shit? I mean, I'm sorry.
Is it
a little
realistic?
inexpedient.
Yes. Is it fun? Yes. When you roll on the crit table and it's a P crit, which stands for puncture, and you get a D crit, which is like the level, and it gives you this beautiful description of how you stabbed your dagger underneath his ribcage, punctured his spleen, and I mean, it's great. But then you also have to remember, yeah, but all we did in this 4-hour game session was kill 3 orcs. So, you know, pros and cons, guys, pros and cons.
Naz9 wants to know what was in the third door that we didn't check when Risa got roasted.
Okay, if they would have opened that door, at the second you would have released the catch on the door, a huge, big, sprung-loaded plate covered in 4-foot spikes was going to shoot straight out and impale whoever was standing there.
Ooh, doesn't sound like fun.
Would have felt bad. You work on a custom class. Could I send it to you to maybe take a look at or give suggestions? Yeah, sure, man. I can help balance that for you, no problem at all. I mean, I've done a lot of that. So,
yeah, I did it for the Witch Hunter.
Yeah, El Soldador, just send it to me. Either, if it's something you want to email, send it to gorbadwow@gmail.com. Gorbad and then WOW@gmail.com. Or if it's something you got to type up anyway, send it to Howreroll. Message me here on Twitch, and I will definitely take a look at it.
Catherine wants to know, you've been really pushing and testing the players. Has there ever been a time when you've gamed with a group extensively and that they pushed you? That you were challenged to stay one step ahead?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Tarazmar, the guy that was on last week, he can push the shit out of a DM. Just because he will take things to such a deep level. You're like, crap, I didn't go that deep. And this is one of the things I will say as a Dungeon Master. Great players teach you and help you improve. When you have players that push you, they make you a better DM, just like many things. one of the things I learned playing with Tarazmar is it is not enough just to give an NPC a name. Because Tarazmar will say something along the lines of, do you have any wife and kids? If so, can I meet them? What are their names? Well, shit. So now I write down all the family relationships and stuff like that. And when I create a world and I create a town or whatever and have NPCs, I do that. I will create relationships between this guy and that guy. And that came because players would push you. So that's one of those things. Have you ever played Exalted? Yes, I did play Exalted. If so, how do you feel about it? I think it's just a great game when you aren't concerned about deep roleplay and balance. Balance, I totally agree with you. Exalted has a little bit of an issue. The roleplay, I think, any role-playing game comes down to this. It's as deep as you want it to be. You can take that game to any level of depth. But for sure, there are some balance issues with that game.
Any other questions, guys? Any for me or for anything? Question mark?
So that's why we're naming everybody on Wednesday mornings. Yes, Catherine, that's exactly why. That's when I say, I want the name of the kid, I want the name of the son, I want the name of the wife. That's exactly why. Because I can't trust that anyone's not going to ask.
Naming things is so hard to do, especially if you have to do it all the time for everything. Even people that aren't going to get met, you know?
Right. Alright, guys. Well, thank you so much for hanging out. I will be here tomorrow morning at 5:30 Central Standard Time for Good Morning Arconis, where we're going to do a little bit more work. You guys get to be part of that. You get to name some NPCs, help come up with stuff, and we're going to have a few things. So yes, indeed, Catherine, there is a stream tomorrow, and Catherine sent me some really cool stuff that I'm actually going to use, some of that. So tune in for that tomorrow morning at 5:30 Central Standard Time. I know it's early for some of you, but you know what? It's fun. It's a very different type of stream. I know Catherine has said it's almost one of her most favorite things to do now, is the morning stream. Well, you're not there.
Yeah,
so
I tend to go to sleep at like 3 or 4 in the morning. No, so when you would go live, yeah.
I made 650 gold pieces to not off raids. Awesome. Cool. Well, that's going to come in handy because Christmas is coming up. And I don't know if you guys remember last year at Christmas, but we gave a shitload of giveaways on our Christmas stream. And we will be doing so again, I can assure you. And also, just while we're talking about it, there is while we didn't do a Halloween special stream this time round, we are doing a Christmas special stream.
Oh, lordy.
So enjoy that. So that'll be coming up for you. And we'll have the full holiday schedule coming your way very soon. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us. We've had fun. We will, if I don't see you tomorrow, we will see you either on Shaggett's Hearthstone Academy Wednesday, tomorrow evening at 7:30, or you can find us on Thursday, as always, at 7:30 for the continuation of the story. Y'all have a fantastic night. We'll see you later. Bye, y'all. Hi there, I'm Gorbad. Welcome to the Orc's Nest. I'm the Dungeon Master here on Howreroll, and if you'd like to follow me personally, you can do so on Twitter at Gorbad. Check out thedmblog.com for all things Dungeon Master and Dungeons & Dragons related. And of course, you can follow me on twitch.tv/Gorbad. Also, guys, don't forget, to keep up with all things Howreroll, follow us on Twitter at Howreroll. Check out the website, www.howreroll.com, and make sure you follow us on YouTube as well. Cheers, guys!
When I'm not playing Radovan Rainier, Cleric of St. Cuthbert for Howreroll, I'm just Shagget, a guy who can't do math in public. You can follow this poor lost soul on twitch.tv/Shagget, or on Twitter at @aneb_convos. For the love of all things boozy, stay in school.
I'm the Dragon Spooker, and I play Marlowe the Hot-Blooded Monk for Howreroll. You can catch my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/thedragonspooker, or you can follow me on Twitter at @dragonspooker. I hope to see you guys around.
Hi guys, thanks for watching today's episode of Howreroll. I hope you had a lot of fun, and if you'd like, you can give me a follow at Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at Bane Blackstar, or come say hi in my own Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Bane1271, I stream full-time and usually play World of Warcraft, The Sims 4, and I even craft things out of polymer clay, but you never know what we'll get up to. I hope you'll come say hi, join in the conversation, and have some fun.
Hi, I'm Jane, and when I'm not fireballing innocent peasants, I'm perusing Twitter, eating ice cream, and petting my cat Norman. You can follow me on Twitch at Jane Ivana, and on Twitter at Jane on Twitch, and that's with a 0, not an L. Goodbye. Or as I say, peace, suckers.